Hey guys, go ahead and get out your note sheet for 2-4 equations with a variable on both sides. We're going to avoid this from happening by paying attention to the steps that you need to use in order to solve equations and really thinking through those steps along the way for each problem so you don't get frustrated and forget what you need to do. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and write these steps down on your note sheet. You're going to use these steps for all kinds of equations from this point forward, and it should be helpful to get you through every single problem. Okay, what we're going to be focusing on now is solving equations where you have variables on both sides of the equation, and it's important to know that you need to get the variables all on one side of the equation before you can actually start solving. And it does not matter which variable you want to move, but I have starred here, and I think it is important to help you out to get used to trying to move the variable that will keep it positive, and this will really help you guys as we get into the next unit on inequalities. So before you start moving things from one side to the other, you should be thinking about how can I make my variable positive. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this example below, just getting in that mind frame of how can you make your variable positive. So if we look at this example, we have on each side, we have a 3x on the left and we have a 4x on the right. So knowing that we have to get those on the same side, you would use opposite operations, which would be adding or subtracting to move something. You would want to think of which one do I want to move? Well, since they're both positive, your property that you would use to get rid of positive values would be subtraction property. So we're thinking, should we subtract a 3x from both sides or subtract a 4x from both sides? And again, you're thinking of the one that will make it positive. So subtracting 4 would give you a -1, subtracting 3x would give you a +1, so that is your best bet. So we're going to go ahead and do this example on the next page. Okay, so we're going to actually go ahead through and then solve this. So if we go through those steps really quickly, there is no distributing, there are no like terms on either side, so we're at step 3 where we're going to actually go ahead through and start solving by moving the variables to make them positive. So then on the left I would be left with 2, on the right I'm left with x minus 1, and then step 4 is just solve using your inverse operation. So at this point, since my variable is on the right hand side, it stays there, and I move that other number away from it. So I'm going to use my addition property to get rid of that -1, and I get my answer of x equals 3. And then of course step 5 here would be to do your check just to make sure. So we're proving is 3 times 3 plus 2, which is 9 plus 2 or 11, the same thing as 4 times 3, which is 12, and 12 minus 1 is 11. So they are equal, so we know that our check does work. Okay, we're going to go ahead and look through solving this. So again, those steps will help you stay organized. Step 1, again, there's no distributing property. So we move to step 2. On the left side, there's no like terms, and on the right side, there's no like terms. So step 3, we want to try and move those variables since I see an 8y on the left and a -3y on the right. And again, I want to try and use or move that variable to make a positive value. So I'm thinking, should I subtract 8 from -3, or should I add 3 to +8? It's kind of obvious in this problem. Your best bet to keep a positive variable is to add 3. So we end up with 11y. And then we move on to step 4, which is solve for your variable. So our variable's on the left, it stays. We need to move the other numbers. So it's a 2-step equation. We're going to add 9. And remember, this is SADMEP, your PEMDAS backwards. And then we're going to divide by 11. And another easy answer, we get y equals 1. Okay, and then our last step from here, we'll just do a quick check. So we have 8 times 1 minus 9, or 8 minus 9, which is -1, and that should equal -3 times 1 plus 2, which is -3 plus 2, and that is -1. So the check does work out. Okay, I'm going to let you guys try this one on your own, and you can pause the video, and it should be one of the 4 answer choices on the left. So go ahead and pause it, see what you get, and then press play to check your answer. Okay, so hopefully you got answer choice 1, which was -3, and I have the steps shown here if you did not get that, or you just need to check through your steps. And you should have added 4x, which would keep your variable positive, subtracted 18, which gave you -15, and then divided by that 5 to give you -3. And I also have the check shown down below, which works out great for this one. Alright, so here goes example 4, and most people tend to freeze up when they see fractions. Don't freak out, it's actually the same steps as regular numbers. I know some people prefer decimals. The problem with using decimals is that not all fractions are decimals that stop, so we're going to learn how to solve this using fractions so that if you do have problems with repeating decimals, you know what to do. So there is no distributive property here, and there are no like terms on the left or right, so your first step is to move those variables to the same side. And you can either add 1/4 to both sides or subtract 1/2, and if I want to keep a positive variable, I'm going to go ahead and add 1/4 to both sides. The problem with fractions and why people tend to not like these is because you need those common denominators to add or subtract. So I know that 1/2 I can easily change into 2/4, and then 2/4 plus 1/4 should be 3/4 x. And then from there, you're going to go ahead and move your numbers to the opposite side of x. So we've got to move 3/4, and it's a -3/4, so we're going to go ahead and add it using our inverse property. And we're left with 3/4 x equals, now again, I need a common denominator, but I know I can easily convert 3/4 to eighths, and it should be 6/8, and 6/8 plus 3/8 would give you 9/8. And that is an 8 there. And then your final step is using your inverse property to get rid of your 3/4. You're going to multiply by your reciprocal so that it cancels, and your reciprocal of 3/4 should be 4/3. And you could multiply straight across, but I see a lot of things that I can simplify. 4 and 8 would be 1 and 2, 3 and 9 would be 1 and 3. So then your final answer here looks like it's 3/2, and I'm going to keep 3/2. You can put 1.5, but the impropers are fine to keep for these, and they're easier to use for your checks as well. So I'm actually going to go ahead and clear all of this and show you guys a second method for solving equations with fractions, and you can choose which method you prefer. I like them both. I think they're both kind of useful, and I know different people prefer each, so let's take a look at this other option. So the second method is for people who absolutely hate fractions and you don't want to deal with common denominators and blah, blah, blah. So what you can actually do for equations with fractions is you can get rid of the fractions so that you have whole numbers. The way you would do that is by using your multiplication property of equality, which states that you can multiply both sides of an equation by any number you want, and the sides will remain equal as long as you multiply everything by that number. So the number that's going to make our life convenient and make these fractions go away would be a common denominator. So if you look at 8, 4, 2, and 4, you're thinking, what's the common denominator of all three of those different numbers? And the least common denominator is the easiest to use. It really could be any number they all go into, but 8, 4, and 2, the smallest number they all go into is 8. So I'm going to go ahead and use 8, and basically I'm going to multiply all 4 of those fractions by 8 and then see what happens. So this is what your problem would look like when you multiply 8 by all 4 fractions. Now from there I'm actually going to go ahead and do the multiplication, but I wanted you to see this step of the 8 times each of those and then what it does to help you guys out. So 8 times 3/8, if you make 8 a fraction as 8 over 1, the 8s would cancel and you're really just going to have 3. 8 times 1/4 would be 8/4, and 8/4 is just 2 over x. 8 times 1/2 of x would be really 8 over 2, which is 4x. And then 8 times 3/4, you can reduce your 4 and your 8, is really going to be 6. So right there, just by using that common denominator, you're going to be able to eliminate all of the fractions, and then we're going to finish solving from here. So I do have a variable on both sides, and to keep it positive, I'm going to add my 2x to both sides to get a 6x. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my 6 to both sides, which gives me a 9, and then my final step is to divide by 6. So I end up with x equals 9/6, but I'm going to go ahead and reduce 9/6 to 3/2. And you can see that both ways give you the same answer, so it's honestly your choice of which method you prefer when solving equations with fractions. Here's just another funny little meme to maybe brighten your day after working with those fractions. Okay, and then the last problem I was going to have you guys try is this challenge one. This one will use all 5 of the steps, so if you go through the 5 steps right now on your own and try and see if you can come up with one of those 4 answers on the left, press pause, and when you're ready to check your answer, go ahead and press play. Okay, so what you should have had first was when you distribute negative 8x minus 8 plus 3x minus 6 equals negative 3x plus 2. Step 2 is combine your like terms. Be careful when you combine your like terms, you should have negative 5x minus 14. And now you're ready to move your variables, trying to move the 1 to make a positive value. By adding 5x, you were able to keep a positive 2x, and now you're going to move everything else away from that 2x. And you should have come up with option 1, which was negative 8 for your answer. So if you got that, good job. This is one of the harder ones that you would see. So that's it. Make sure you have your note sheet with you when you come to class next time. We're going to do the back together, so don't worry about doing any of that now. And I will see you guys soon.